Yahsonn. Real conversations. Lately we be having conversations with the people, cause we feel like there's nobody really talking truth. We be having conversations with the people, cause too many media houses changing up the news. Everything was green light, now we seeing red. Everybody got opinions, few got facts instead. We be having conversations with the people, cause we feel like there's nobody really talking truth. Tuesday night and everybody tuned in live. Bankie Yahsonn bringing reason in every time. Talking politics and the things affecting lives. Breaking down the stories they be trying to hide. Used to trust the system, now the trust gone. Everybody talking loud, but the facts wrong. People tired of the fake and the gimmicks too, so they coming to the Topiks for a clear review. Got the whole Caribbean locked on the station. Real entertainment network building conversation. No script vibes, now stage for the camera. Just real people talking straight with stamina. Yeah, we be having conversations with the people, cause we feel like there's nobody really talking truth. We be having conversations with the people, cause too many media houses changing up the news. Everything was green light, now we seeing red. Everybody got opinions, you got facts instead. We be having conversations with the people, cause we feel like there's nobody really talking truth. Sometimes Fridays got a special live session. Big topics got the whole place stressing. Agriculture, crime, economy discussion. Every episode spark another conversation, and the comments start flying when the lights start. Everybody got a view from the heart. Some agree and some disagree too, but at least the Topiks bringing real views. No pretending when the mic turn on. Yahsonn reasoning while Bankie stay strong. People checking in from overseas too, cause authentic conversation hard to come through. Everything was green light, now we seeing red. Everybody got opinions, few got facts instead. We be having conversations with the people, cause we feel like there's nobody really talking true.
Okay, yeah.
And global greetings. Welcome to another edition of the Topics here on Real Entertainment Network. It's another beautiful Tuesday evening here in the Federation of Oli and Layamiga. Oli, the indigenous name for the island known as Nevis, and Layamiga, the indigenous name for the island known as St. Kitts. And seemingly those are the only two indigenous words that we do have in existence still, and I hope and pray that eventually they could be and return to be the official names of the islands. As we continue, I also want to say good evening to our brothers and sisters throughout the entire Eastern Caribbean, and to the people around the globe, morning, afternoon, or evening. Some one of those greetings may be applicable to you depending on where you are geographically. This evening we have for you an exclusive edition of the Topics, and we have a very special guest that I'm honored to be in the presence of this evening. But we will get into a little bit more of our guest. In the meantime, we'll just give you the honor and privilege to look at the face. And well, the name is on the screen a bit, so we're giving it away a little bit in the meantime. But I'll give my co-host Bankie an opportunity to introduce himself. Before I do, just want to say good evening to the good folks there at Islander Water Sports. That's the good plug eye and good folks there that take you between the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis from Oli via the Oli Seawater Taxi and Reggae Beach over on Sugar City, St. Kitts. 5 to 6 minutes to get you on the other side, and they take you there in style. If you want to get a charter to go to some of the neighboring islands, St. Martin, Anguilla, St. Eustatius, you can check them out. They definitely take care of you. If it's late night or early morning and you want to get between the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, even if they're not scheduled, they would accommodate you. So just call up the good folks there at Islander Water Sports. And while you are awaiting to whether go to St. Kitts or you're coming from St. Kitts and you're waiting for your taxi or your ride to come and get you, you can always make a stop on the rocks right there and get some of the good beverages they have there and the goodies, fresh wild caught fish, among other vegan options that you can get there on the rocks. Tell them we sent you from here on Real Entertainment Network and on the topics. Also want to say good night to Shaba's Organics, Imperial Rides, Taxi and Tours, and the good folks who usually listen to us, whether it's via Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. And we want to encourage all those who are locked in at this point. While we are making our introductions, please go over to the YouTube platform, click on the notification bell, subscribe, like, and share. That's all we're asking of you. Your 10 seconds to go on over there and join our platform goes a long way for us. So please take a few seconds and do that. With that said, want to say good evening to my co-host. Bankie, greetings, brother. Welcome to another edition of the Topics.
Greetings, Yahsonn, and let's say greetings to all those who tune into Real Entertainment Network this evening to listen to the topics. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. You could be listening to any media house, but you choose to join the Real Entertainment team. It shows that you have an interest in what goes on within the community, regional and internationally, and when it comes to you as a person, as African people. So greatly appreciate our guest this evening, Yahsonn. It's an honor. He's one of the person that I've learned about over the years, and also some of the people he's been around. So it's the universe is really aligning stuff for us. So it's one thing by my way of exploring and finding myself, it shows that the universe just don't make mistakes, and nothing is coincidental. So we all have a part to play, and once you find that position, and the universe chose you, you can't take off that glasses, you know, got to make a decision what you're going to do. So I have to make that decision. Whatever the universe put me, I represent and deal with it, and that's all it is. And I don't question it. I just do what I'm supposed to do, and everything always work out well. So my heart is in a good space, being in the presence of Professor Smalls, and along with whatever the universe have for me coming forward, I accept everything that is already in motion already. So definitely I'm looking forward for the reasoning. It's a lot to speak about. Well, we have Mr. Professor Smalls here, and then in the future, which is now past, we can get him back and continue the conversation. So I want to say good evening to the folks at Mansa's Last Stop and Shabazz Organics. Big up my cousin Amonis, Aisha, and Tasha over there in the US, keeping their dad legacy alive. And let me say thanks to all those who come daily and patronize on Friday and Sunday, Saturday and Sundays, where you get your best cornmeal and fish, your oxtail and cornmeal, rice and chicken and soon. Family tradition that been passed down from generation to generation. So once you touch the food, you're going to be hooked over and over. Plus, the ambience is right on the road. The beach is just across the street, and it's a 4-acre farm. You can explore and have fun and wait. It's a peaceful environment to be in. You can't beat that. So, once again, thanks for choosing Real Entertainment Network, and definitely looking for the reasoning. Professor Smalls, good evening to you.
Good evening, my brother. I am very, very happy. I think your nation was called the land of the beautiful waters.
Yes.
And I'm happy in Nevis this night. I will be there in person the next time we talk.
Yes.
But I'm very happy to be with you, so that we can discuss our history, our spirituality, politics, our economics, our culture. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I definitely love the sound of that. And Bankie, it is more than an honor to have Professor James Small here with us on the platform, and I'm gonna take a few minutes to introduce him officially to the platform via a bio that we would have done a little bit of. And as you were, mentioning the ambience and the support of the folks on the weekend, I want to take a few minutes to give some thanks to the folks who would have supported the Mother's Day brunch we had at Heritage Cafe on Sunday. Well attended, and I think the folks who attended were blown away at the efforts that were put into the picnic style that was, greeted, the use of some pallets and just sitting on the ground and, dining in that mundane and earth, experience. It was quite interesting, and I really wanna, thank those who came out and supported the event, and
Beautiful.
those who continue to support the efforts of Heritage Cafe maintaining the culture and using a lot of the local, you know, produce and dishes and maintain the history and all that. With that said, give thanks to the good folks at Island of Water Sports and the Rocks, and those are our major sponsors for the topics. Thanks for coming on board, and people going out and support the adventure. Tonight we have a special guest. With us, we have Professor Smalls. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Topics with your host Yahsonn and Tafari. Yahsonn Tafari Shabazz Bankie King. Tonight our special episode is is featuring Professor Smalls, and for this evening, he is an internationally respected as one of the foremost scholars and voices on African spirituality, Pan-Africanism, Black liberation philosophy, and the historical experiences of African people worldwide. For decades, he has lectured across Africa, the Caribbean, Europe, and the Americas on African history, culture, metaphysics, politics, economics, and nationhood. A former professor at the City University of New York and a longtime activist in the Pan African movement, Professor Small has dedicated his life to awakening African people to the importance of identity, self determination, historical truth, and spiritual grounding. His work bridges the gap between the ancient African wisdom and the modern struggles facing black communities throughout the diaspora. Tonight's discussion goes beyond religion, it goes beyond politics. This is a conversation about consciousness, memory, liberation, culture, spirituality, and the future of African people globally, from the Caribbean to the United States, from the continent of Africa to every corner of the diaspora. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, it's truly an honor to welcome to the topics Professor James Small. Greetings, my brother. Welcome to the platform. And at this point, I'll give you an opportunity to, add or, correct anything that was highlighted in the brief bio. I know I could have gotten into a lot more details because it's really colorful. Um,
Yeah.
but what we want to do is give you an opportunity to tell our listening audience who you are, because sometimes it's better hearing it from the individual himself. And I know sometimes you guys would say, oh, we don't like to toot our own horns and so on, but sometimes it's good to at least share your story. So we want to give you the opportunity to give a little synopsis, add some meat to what we would have, highlighted, and give a little backdrop of your story. Even if you want to take it back to your childhood and where you grew up and all that, we're open to that. And then we're gonna, get into some of the topics that we want to discuss this evening. Have some questions from myself, have some questions from Bankie, and then our listening audience are usually very active on the platforms in terms of their questions, and we will have an opportunity, I think, in the second hour to open up the phone lines and give folks an opportunity to call in. And if they have any questions, or they want to commend you, or they want to, whatever it is, give them that opportunity. As long as
Mhm.
they, be respectful and be respectful of our guests on the platform, we definitely welcome you. And so, with that said, I'm giving you the floor to give your introduction and to, like I said, add anything to what we would have highlighted in the brief bio.
Thank you so much, Brother Tafari and Brother King. I'm just extraordinarily happy to be in Nevis, even technically. Like I said, I will soon be there physically.
Yes.
But I'll start with now and go back. I'm married to a young lady whose family, she was born in Aruba. Her mother is from Trinidad. Her father is from St. Martin. We've been married 55 years. That's a nice little time. We have 6 children, and that we gave birth to, and then we have 2 that we adopted in Ghana. They're all adults, and they've given us 23 grandchildren. So we're expecting our first great-grandchild in 7 months. So we've already had parties and celebration, and we're waiting for him to come. My early years, I grew up in South Carolina. Your capital is Charlestown. I grew up, most of my family just outside of Charlestown, South Carolina, in Georgetown, South Carolina, on a rice plantation, Most of my family come from the Maroon community. Most people don't think of Maroon communities in America, but we had lots of them. And so where we come from is called the Freewood. So they call us the Freewood niggers. And so that's how we were identified through most of the centuries there. I met Malcolm X back in 1963. And then I joined the American military. Malcolm was assassinated. So after he was assassinated, I came home. I didn't finish my time. I took the consequences. And I became the imam that succeeded Malcolm X over the Muslim Mosque and Incorporated. And then I became his sister Ella Collins' bodyguard as she became the president of Malcolm X's OAAU. For most of my life, I went to Mecca in the early days and did the Hajj, and then I realized that was not our religion. That was not African. Even though it was born in Africa, it had, and I'll tell you about that in a second, like Christianity, born in Africa, but got adopted by somebody else that turned it into something terrible. That enslaved people and murdered people and genocided people. That's not what our forefathers in their relationship to Christ and God saw in Ethiopia. And so we'll touch on that for a minute. So I am as well a priest in the Yoruba tradition. My main shrine is in Trinidad in Chaguanas, Enterprise Village. My shrine came through Caracou on the way from Haiti after the assassination of Dessalines. That shrine and its leader was able to escape to the Caracou and Grenadines, and then made it to 125 years ago to Trinidad. So that's where my spirit arrives. My grandmother, who helped to raise me, was also a traditional African priestess. They call her root woman. But I also have a doctor's degree in theology. I taught at the City University for 18 years. I was an administrator at New York City University City College for 16 years. So I've been both in the system and out of the system. I was a supporter from the very beginning of Black Panther Party and Black Liberation Army, and very proud of it. Was a comrade of Assata Shakur, who have passed recently in Cuba. I come out of the struggle, both the intellectual struggle and the physical armed struggle. So that has been a little bit of my life. I, with some comrades, own a business in Ghana, a couple of business. One of them is a hotel business for the past 20 years. I have a company that does tours to Africa for the past 40 years. I've only missed 1 year. And I'm preparing myself mentally now because every year on May 19th, Malcolm X's birthday, this will be the 61st year that I will lead the people to his graveside by the thousands to pay our respects to his sacrifice for us on that day. So that's kind of what my life has been like, working in our community, teaching in our community, helping our people to understand themselves, understanding our culture, helping them to learn what true self-determination is, taking control of the economic, politics, and culture where you live. You know, some people says, oh, these other businesses, these other ethnic groups, they are exploiting us. No, we are paying them to do so. We give them our money. We go to their facility, we shop with them. No, we can say, oh, we will hold our money and we will pool our minds and we will open such a business for ourselves and shop there. We do not have to empower you to complain about you. But we'll get into a little bit of that tonight. This is about survival. This is about culture. This is about, a lot of people think, you know, when you're Rastafari or when you're Yoruba or when you Candomblé or like in Brazil or when you're Akan, when you are what God made you, they think there's something wrong with you. That's how complete the enemy has messed us up. You see? And so we're going to look at it and says, okay, if God made me this, why do you want me to be ashamed of this? If God made me this, why do you want me to continue to turn my back on it because my enemy once turned my back on it? That's what we're going to talk about. We're just going to do some common sense about self-love, about finding the God inside of you. And that's where God has always been. Never been in the sky. And there's not a single person, even in Western religion, could tell me their book, say God in the sky. All of it, including a Christ that God is within you. That is an African foundation thing. You know, so we'll go wherever the Spirit tells us to go and wherever history take us in the discussion.
Okay.
All right.
Professor Smalls, I grew up here, like in the island, like most people. It's on 36 square miles. The other island is 68, so a population less than 50,000 people. If it's one thing we do have here is a lot of churches. I grew up going to church, and especially on Sundays, 3 times a day. Sunday school, and then still regular church. Then go back in the afternoon. Then when there's Methodist, the Pentecostal, the Baptist, Catholic, you just name it. Because some of my friends, we all go different church, and then we all end up in the same church, and some we just choose. So one of the things, who are us as a people? What our purpose? Why we're here? And who our ancestors call God?
Right. That's a good, very good question. The first thing we have to realize that all science, all paleontology, say that the African was the first of creation. All anthropology, all paleontology, ancient science, all biology says an African woman was the first manifestation of God as human. And she gave birth to everybody else. That alone ends the discussion. Or should end the discussion. No. But it hasn't, because we are afraid to do what all of the Christian and Abrahamic religions tell us. Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Truth alone shall set you free. Not the Bible, not the Torah, not the Quran. It says all 3 of those books say the truth alone shall set you free. And then all 3 of those books say God is truth. God is love. The reason we are in Nevis today, because some Christians and some Muslims who said God is truth and God is love lied, murdered, kidnapped, raped, genocided an African people and brought us here for them to make money off of sugarcane. And they can try to pretty it up with all kinds of history books, but the truth is the truth. And we've been trying to find our way back to our original self before they interrupted our life in Africa. And some of us have married, of course. I can see in your face, you can see in mine, the Tainos and the Arawaks, who was here minding their business, living in God's peace, when these people came and interrupted us with their greed for money Our women's body was not sacred. Look at my skin. They've raped them at will for hundreds of years. And now they want to pretend like slavery was some work program that we signed up for. Slavery was not some work program. It was genocide. It was genocide then. It is genocide now. And we have to be very clear about that. Some people say, oh, well, some of your African chiefs sold you. So let's find those chiefs. Let's dig them up and punish them. But the millions and millions and millions of Africans on that continent who were victims, whose brothers got sold, sons got sold, daughters got sold, ripped from them, whose village got burnt to the ground, who had to run in the woods and live for years hiding for their life. They did not sell us into anything. We had no guns. Those with the guns came to our land. And if we know we have corrupt people in America here in the black community. You got corrupt people right there. Nevis, as small as it is today. We had corrupt people back then. But 99% of our people were not corrupt. They were just farmers and fishermen and women, living their lives as God prescribed for them to do. But for the sake of, I want wealth, I want power, other people from the east and the north and the west came to our land and ripped us apart. And we have not been able to heal ourselves yet. Even independence in the 60s have not given us true healing. And until, I think it was Dr. Asa Hilliard said, true freedom is to be shackled to your identity. True freedom is to be shackled to your identity. And that's why Dessalines was so clear in Haiti. He says, freedom or death. There's no in between that. Two choices, freedom or death. That has not changed to this day. And so we live in a culture that talks about God, 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 Allah, 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 Yahweh, Yahweh, Jehovah, Jehovah. Please come. We pray louder and longer than anyone in the world. Where have you been? Did you have your headset on? And I'm not being disrespectful, because the church that I grew up in a Baptist church. My grandpa was the Baptist minister in South Carolina. And 500 years before the Roman Catholic Church was started, 500 years before the Roman Catholic Church was started, there was church all over the Sudan and Ethiopia. Ethiopia still have a church that's 500 years old, the Church of Mariam, that sits today in Ethiopia, 500 years older than the Roman Catholic Church, and 1,000 years older than Martin Luther Reformation that created the Protestant Church, which now dots the islands. So the African church is at least 1,000 years older than the European church that have been misguiding us to this day. The ones that condone slavery and say, slave, serve your master.
Be your earthly master.
Your earthly master. The Ethiopian church do not say that. Our Bible in Ethiopia have twice the books than the Catholic Church and the European Protestant Church, which we have now been forced to adopt to do slavery, and we continue to live in after slavery. Now, we've transformed them a little to our betterment, but we have not transformed them out of the vicious ugliness that has so much disrespect for Africa and thinks African. How can you say you're of God, but Africans, we're ugly. Black is not beautiful. Our hair is nappy. We come from the jungles. Long before the Britons stopped walking in the sewage of London We had sewage systems in Benin under the ground. We had street lights in the great Benin city in Nigeria. The same Brits who was coming out of the squalor and dirt burnt it to the ground. Some of it is still left. We had a wall longer than China. Some of it is still there in Nigeria to see. Get on the plane and go. They stole all of our artwork, some of the best bronze work ever cast on earth. Fills the museum in Britain and Germany and France. And they won't give it back to us. Yes, this is your bronze, but we can keep it safer in our museum. You stole it. You're a thief. You're a thief. If you took everything out of the European museums, and to my brothers and sisters who get scared when people talk like this, please don't be afraid. If you tell the truth, God is with you. No matter what religion you claim, there's only one God. God didn't give us none of these names. We made up these names ourselves to describe what we consider to be the divine. God will stand with truth. The truth is the light. Know the truth and it shall set you free. Why would someone be afraid of that? Go to the museums of Europe. Take everything stolen from Africa out of those museums. They would only need one building to house their collections. You hear what I'm telling you? Go see for yourself, from London to Paris to German to Antwerp, and take everything African out. Take it back home to our people. Take our gold. Take our diamonds out of the Queen's crown. Take it back home. Take it back to India, the Grand Diamond. And what are they left with? All that they flaunt before us is what they stole from us. How incredible. How arrogant. And I remember when we gave them civilization to civilize them, and I didn't say this, it was 2 popes back. He was in Cameroon in 2009, and this was reported in Life magazine in Europe. The Pope says, out of the 10 people that began to write the Bible in Nicaea for Constantine, the Emperor of Rome, 8 were African. Do you hear what I'm saying? 8 of the 10 men who were at the Nicene Conference, the bishops, the Pope said they were African. Now, if the Pope's lying, then the Pope is lying. We know St. Augustine was African. We know St. Athanasius was African. So if we want the truth, if we want to begin to free ourselves of this self-hate, if we want to begin to let us learn how to love what is ours. You see the Rasta Brazils running around with their dreadlocks. Well, no African ever call our hair dreadlocks. Dread is a British word for fear. We were whipping them so bad in the islands, they said we fear the dreaded ones. We fear the dreaded ones. Or the lock ones. We fear the lock ones means dreadlocks. Every African kingdom, the priest and the high priest all wear that hair. If you see pictures of me when I'm 80 years now, but if you saw me when I was younger, I had locks most of my life. You know, age start removing them. So, but that comes with time. I'm trying to go to a lot of places to touch people a little bit. You've got to know the truth if you want to be free. You can't be afraid of the truth. And you can't say, oh, if I tell the truth, it's going to hurt my enemy's feelings. That has nothing to do with the truth. And if your enemy's feelings get hurt from the truth, that's not your, that is your enemy. That's not your friend. You know? Even science tells you that truth is the most appropriate place to be in the human mind, behavior, and character. Now, like some there who will look at me and say, oh, that boy got on his little African hat. I'm also a Freemason. Yes, in good standing. I can show you my card and let you know that I'm not playing around. That comes from us too. That comes right out of Africa. And we need to have a deeper understanding of the things that come out of Africa. My card is here.
But if
But all you
but
do,
the
any good
Freemason,
believer,
but the
just
Freemason
put
that people know about is different to the Freemason you speak of and the
I'm
concept.
not from the enemy Freemason. I'm from the African real Freemason.
Yeah.
All right. Freemasonry comes out of ancient Egypt, not out of London. And anybody in my lodge will tell you, I don't keep my tongue. And everybody in my lodge will tell you, Cornerstone 37, Prince Hall Grand Lodge in the state of New York. That small lecture to us and speaks the truth. They've taken our tools to build human character and made it theirs, just like they took our bodies and brought it from Africa, took our minds, our culture, our language, give us their minds, their culture, and language, and made us theirs. But who would dare see a rabbit acting like a bird just because you put the rabbit in a bird cage for some time? When you open that bird cage, the rabbit is still a rabbit. So how come the African gonna stop being an African because he lives in St. Kitts rather than Africa for 500 years? Malcolm X said if the cat have kittens in an oven, the kittens don't become biscuits. They're still cats. So if the African have children in the Americas, we're still Africans. Where's our language? We got thousands of them.
So Professor Smalls, so why we still don't understand the concept of God? What our ancestors were showing us on that path, because many spend their whole life and still
Ignorant.
can't even find that path.
Yes.
So can you explain that path?
If one was to look up the word Yahweh, which is the foundation word for God in the Abrahamic tradition, you will find its roots in Egypt, Black Egypt, thousands and thousands of years before you will find it in Canaan, which was also black, and then in the Hebrew Israelite, which is also black, not Jewish, white. It didn't exist yet. And yet you would find the very word for the supreme God in Africa. But long before that, long before there was a Moses, we knew God. Listen to the stories. You don't listen well in your own Bible, even though they've lied and made mistakes in the Bible. Deliberately, some was deliberate. A lot of it was just ignorance. When they translated our literature into their languages, they didn't know anything about our language, not enough to make decent translation. They knew nothing about our religion, not enough to make decent conceptual rearrangements. So they took their ignorance and their backwards and their arrogance and created a book and then presented to the world with a bloody sword for centuries. And under fear made you bow. But if you study even that literature, in Revelations is the only description. It said when Christ came back, his skin would be bronze, like the three of us, baked in the sun. That means blacker than me. It looks like you, King. When the bronze is baked in the sun, it turns black. His hair would be like lamb's wool. That's Tafari's got his covered right now. Look at his beard. That's the lamb's wool. That's how the Revelation described the Christ. So if you don't want to listen to nothing I say, just listen to that. But you go further. Abraham comes out of Ur and the Chaldees, and he comes into Egypt, and he's a coward. He lies and says Sarah is his sister, and gives his wife to the Pharaoh because he's scared. If God came to the Pharaoh via the angel, they say this, and said that woman is married. And the Pharaoh called Abraham and his people from how why would you make me commit a crime against God like that to go with your wife? So how you gonna say the Africans had no God when the man God wouldn't let him have your wife, even though you gave your wife to him? Think about it. I could tell you some scary things about the Bible that you're missing because you're not reading well. You're reading like they told you to read. Let me tell you a little something. Everybody heard of Barabbas. You heard of Barabbas. We all had to learn about Barabbas around Easter time. And he gets arrested by the Romans. They said he was a murderer and a thief, but they let him go and they crucified Christ. What does the word Barabbas mean? Bar means in Hebrew, son of. Rabbas mean the Lord. Was that Christ's son? Did he give himself and surrender himself to free his son? Because Mary Magdalene said, you better get my boy out of that jail because you start that fracas in the temple when you turn over all the tables and created that confusion and my child got arrested. Read the book and see how you can miss the simplest things. He's crucified. About 3 in the afternoon, all of the scholars agree. By the time he gets to the cross, it's about 3 in the afternoon. But it's Friday. What is Friday? At sundown is Shabbat, the Sabbath. No one can be on the cross on Shabbat. No funeral can take place once Shabbat starts. So you got to get him off of that cross within an hour and bury him. And so there's 3 men. The book tells you they break the legs of the other 2. Why don't they break his? Because he had to walk away. I know I'm going a little rough and a little deep, but it's in the book. Read it. Stop pretending to read it. Read it. And you will see.
The story of Horus and Isis.
I'm going to get to that. Okay. Don't you get scared on me. Be cool. It's going to be all right.
All right.
God is going to take you. Know the truth. The truth is it will set you free. The man is on the cross. We know it takes 3 or 4 days to die on the cross because you die from suffocation, from the body weight pulling the body down and the muscles in your neck kill you, right? But they can't do that today because they got to get him right off of the cross. They just put them. So they break the 2 other gentlemen's leg, but they don't break the Christ's leg, right? Then someone says, oh, small, that's okay. They stab him in the side with the spear. Yes, that's what the Chronicle says. Remember, I'm a theologian now. I read the book. And they said he bled blood and water. He bled blood and water. Any doctor will tell you that when the metabolism process of the body is slowed down and the brain no longer requires a lot of oxygen, then you will bleed blood and water. You will appear to be dead, but you will not indeed be dead. Modern science will tell you that. But then you say, oh, small. Wait. How do you get to that conclusion? Well, if you take some opium, if you smoke some good ganja, it will slow everything in your body down. So he cries, I thirst, I thirst. And somebody brought him vinegar and gall. What was that? Fermented apple juice and opium. And that slowed his metabolism down to such a degree that when he got stabbed, he bled blood and water. He was not dead. I'll stop right there. If you're going to read the book, read it or put it down. If you're going to read Revelation and hear that it's going to be like bronze burnt in the sun and you still have that other race up in your church, there's something wrong with your mind. Then you're being intentionally abusive of the consciousness of your own people, those who are ministers. You know? And I served in the ministry for decades in multiple religions. And they all say the same thing. that Christ said, are we not all gods? That God is within thee? Is that not in the book? Then why are you teaching me contrary to that? Now let's come back to Africans. I'm a priest in the Yoruba tradition. In that tradition, I'm Obanjoko Adebayo. And my spiritual guide light is Oya. Her symbol is the wind. Her power is change, transformation. Our deity, the word we use in Yoruba to call that deity, is Oludumare. Olu means heaven. Dumare means the ruler of heaven. There's no difference between man's view of divinity, no matter where he lives in the world. The names may change depending on language. The rituals may change depending on ecology and the tools you have to use to create a ritual, but the idea of the divine is the same. Good character. In the story of my deity, Oya, the wind, she's a beautiful woman with locks. And so she marries a man named Shango. Shango is the king, the Alafin. The king represents power, authority. But in the metaphor and the story, Shango let his power and authority go to his head. He let his arrogance and ego, because of power and authority, cause him to be responsible for the death of one of his brothers. So he runs into the forest when he realizes what he's done, and he commits suicide. But Oya sees him and cuts him down and did not let him die and nurse him back to health. And in the short story, she marries him. And she marries him because Shango, when he realized what ego and arrogance had led him to do, he desired change. He developed the concept of faith and wanted to change to be better. And he developed the courage to want to change. So when the courage to want to change come to your consciousness, in your consciousness you marry Oya, because Oya is change in process. But Oya practiced polyandry, meaning a woman have more than one husband. So she marries another man too. His name is Ogun. Ogun, the god of iron, the god of steel, the god of war. But that's the symbol. The reason they use iron, because to get iron, you take a piece of rock, which is dirty, full of all kinds of different impurities. You can't make nothing out of it right away. So you put it in the fire and you burned out the impurities and you get steel. And from the steel, you can make weapons and tools and you can build civilization. And so that represents what in the human character? Transformation. Transformation comes from what? From the result of change. So Shango represents the desire to change, had to marry the process of change, who then married transformation as the result of change. Those are three Yoruba gods, and that is the meaning of them. And so when we look at our religion, we were not polytheists because we didn't call them gods. We use that in this language. They were forces of nature. They were forces and quality and attributes of God, the divine, Oludumare. The Africans, in every African language, you will find they believed in one God. If you go further down to the Bantu, going towards Congo and Angola, and you look at their word for person, people, place, or thing, each of those words have either as the prefix or the suffix into, which is their word for the divine God. So they're saying God is in every and all things at once. Person, people, place, or thing have the essence of God in it. That's our culture. That's our language. Language carries culture. Language is like the ship. Culture lives inside of it. That's why they took our language away from us and give us their language, which is a boat full of holes. When you begin to study, you will see some things that will open your eyes. If you go back to ancient Egypt, you will see the queens and the kings are wearing locks. Their hair is still there. Go. I take trips every year. I'm going to Africa in a few weeks, and I'll be going back with a big group in a few months. And we go to Egypt, and you go into the tomb. The mummies as black as this foam. Black like that, their skins. And the hair is still there, still in their braids. Some of the women have it braided, and the men have it in locks. See for yourself. They've hid it long enough that they can't hide the truth no more. They built a grand museum. And you will go there, and you will see a book like the pyramid text. And everyone in the world admits that the pyramid text is the oldest written religious book in the world. Older than anything in Buddhism, older than anything in Hebrew, Islam, or Christianity. It's called the pyramid text. And I see the brothers just taking down the book of the coming forth by day that they call the book of the dead. We call it the book of the coming forth by day. But the pyramid text is older than even this. It's by Faulkner, the translation. And I just want to recite to you a part of the creation story in the African book, the pyramid text, that's at least 50,000 years older than the Bible, Torah, or Quran. And it goes like this. This is God speaking. God says, God is called Atum. And Atum says, I create myself out of myself. I cause existence to exist so that existing might exist. And when I realized that I existed, the woman was at my side, Ma'at, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. And then God's Atum says, I spat out Shu, the air, the moisture, and I cough up Tepnut, the gases. And they gave birth to Geb, the heavenly bodies, and to Nut, the earth. And Geb and Nuth fell in love and had intercourse. And they gave birth to Asar and a Set, who we call Adam and Eve. All of this we said 50,000 years before they ever knew they could write. This is in every museum in Europe. They just don't tell us. And for the Muslims, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kul Allahu Ahad. Allahu Samad. Walam yulad, walam yulid. Walam yakufuwan ahad. Allahu Akbar. That prayer is called the Ikhlas. It talks about the oneness of God. Well, about 30,000 years before that prayer was done in Arabic, it was done in a language called the Medu-Neter in ancient Egypt by a pharaoh, one of the blackest featured pharaoh in Africa, Akhenaten, the husband of Nefertiti. And not that white Nefertiti in the book, that's a fraud. When you go to Africa and you see the sculpture of the real African woman Nefertiti, you see how the fraudulent and how lie these people are. And his poem was word for word, his prayer, was word for word, the same prayer that I just recited in Arabic. It says, O soul God, you who have given birth to none, and who was given birth to by none, and there's none like it unto you, O God, and I am your servant. Almost word for word of the Ikhlas of the Muslim. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? I'm trying to just say, we are before. Of course. Let me come away from religion for a minute. There was a man, and obviously in history he was a good man. His name was Plato. You ever heard of Mr. Plato? Yeah. Great philosopher of the Greeks.
Yes.
And in college they made us to read the Republic, which was supposed to be the work of Plato, that was written by Aristotle, right?
Yes.
Plato wrote a work before that called Phaedra, of the Phaedrus. And you can learn about it today by looking up a man named Kujari, who wrote a book called The History of Mathematics. Kujari, Cujari. His History of Mathematics, first chapter in the introduction, paragraph 1. Kujari says that Plato writes in Phaedrus that the Africans, but they didn't use the word African back then, they used the word Ethiopians. Plato said the Ethiopians have given the world all of its sciences. Then he lists them. He said the Ethiopians have given the world arithmetic. This is Plato, the greatest philosopher they had, besides Thales, who studied in Africa for 40 years and admits it. Plato said the Ethiopians have given the world geometry. Plato said the Ethiopian have given the world medicine. Plato said the Ethiopian have given the world astronomy and astrology. Then Plato said, but the greatest science of all that the Ethiopians have given to the world is the science of writing itself. So leave me alone. I'm not causing no trouble. I'm quoting Mr. Plato from his book, The Phaedrus. See, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Truth alone, according to your literature, shall set you free. So the African man and women in Nevis and St. Kitts and Jamaica and South Carolina and New York City and Wyoming and Mississippi and Canada and even Nigeria and Ghana, because we're in trouble over there in Africa too. The curricula is still taught the same foolishness. Our history is not taught in most African countries. Our religions, our indigenous religions, are still desecrated in most African countries. None of it is taught in the schools except in a few countries. Because the same enslaver that enslaved and colonized us here, enslaved and colonized our people on the continent too. And we think our brothers and sisters at home are free to just be themselves. No. When we look at Burkina Faso, Mali and Algeria, then we understand what they're trying to tell us. They want to be free, to self-determine for themselves. They do not want contracts from the World Bank and International Fund coming out of America. Say, we will give you some loan to develop your country, but you can't grow any food to feed yourself. You got to buy your food from us. You can't build any plant to make your own medicine. You got to buy your medicine from us. Otherwise, we will not assist you. And on and on. And you must take our birth control pills, or we will not give you money for health care. That's what these contracts say from World Bank and International Monetary Fund. We will loan you our money. We will give you $2 billion to build your infrastructure, but the money must stay in an American bank. You can't put it in a Burkina bank. You can't put it in a Mali bank. You can't get interest of the very money you're going to be paying back interest on. Do you understand what I'm saying? And those young brothers are saying, no. Time is up. We want to be free now. We want to be God's children now. God does not tolerate voluntary enslavement. God does not tolerate any kind of enslavement, especially voluntary enslavement. And a lot of us who are ruling and leading and making money and frolicking and having fun are keeping themselves and our people in voluntary enslavement in Nevis, in New York, in South Carolina. And we've got to be conscious of this. Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Truth alone will set you free. The Christ that you worship in the Bible said God is within you. Not me. Brother Small is not saying that. I'm simply repeating. Your book of Revelation says when he descends back to earth again to build his new kingdom, he will look like bronze burnt in the sun, and his hair will look like lamb's wool while he's coming down in his white, silver, shiny garments. The book says that, not me, your book. So why are you acting contrary? That's just on the religion. But we need to talk, even if we get our religion straight, can we feed ourselves?
Yes, agriculture.
Our children to college to study agriculture. Every house in Nevis, somebody has to paint it. Every house in Nevis got a plumbing system. Every house in Nevis that's built with brick or foundation that maybe brick and cement needed masonry. Every house in Nevis needs someone to wire it electrically. Are we training our young people to do this work? Or we are bringing in foreigners to do that work and leaving our kids standing on the street corner looking for work?
That is one of the things that we're not doing, pushing skills training. We are pushing academics at the highest. But yet, when it comes to development, you have to import people because then your people see that at a level. We should be way more. Go ahead.
It's frightening that you would have to import somebody to do the most basic and fundamental vocational work of your society when your children can't even find work because you're training him in a false elect by an enemy to make sure he will never look in a mirror and see himself. Every time you look in that mirror, he imagines to be the white man that once practiced genocide on him physically and is now practicing genocide on him psychologically and spiritually. Let me say that again. People want to be afraid. They have to get afraid on their own. Maybe God will tell them how to overcome their fear. You look in the mirror, you should see an African. You should see your ancestors. You should see your grandmother, your great-grandfather, your great-great-uncle. That's who you should see. And you should see them struggling to tell you, be the best African man or woman you can be. And they should be telling you how handsome and beautiful you are in your black, silky skin and your nappy hair. And a mind that built civilizations before others know how to even dig a hole to plant the plant too. While they were still picking wild berries to eat in Europe and Asia, we had already built civilization that had the time and built new ones. We built Timbuktu, that had one of the biggest libraries and universities in the world. We built great Zimbabwe, built the great Monomatapa. We built the great Nubian civilization. We built the great Egyptian civilization. We built the great Congo civilizations. All of this before the black man and woman called the Moors went into Europe through Spain and taught them civilization. We had tried one century earlier to civilize the Roman and the Greeks, who writes about us very favorably, by the way. Matt, they said the father of history is a man named Herodotus.
Yes.
But they didn't give book 2. In book 2, Herodotus tells how the African gave them all that they had that he talked about in book 1. So now they say Herodotus, he wasn't really the father of history. Well, you said he was the father of history. Then you gave me Homer. I read his works at 15 years old because I was a houseboy for the Vanderbilts, working in their pantry, washing dishes. But they gave me one privilege to use their library. And I read the Odyssey and Iliad at 15. Didn't know what it was until I was about 30, truly understanding it, you know? And they said that the Odyssey and the Iliad by Homer is the oldest book in the world. Well, we know now that's not true. That's a baby compared to the book of ancient Nubia, ancient Sudan, and ancient Ethiopia. But let's take them at their word. Then why does Homer say that the gods of Greece have to travel to Ethiopia every year to renew themselves? This is your Homer. Use this. So we need to, as African people, realize we've been through a war. We're still in the war economically and politically and psychologically and spiritually. The war that went on when we were getting beat on the backs with the whips and when we were chained up to the tree and when we were hung by our feet, that war is now not as physical. They've got us doing that to one another now. They've got our minds. Bob Marley took the word of Marcus Garvey and said, we must free our minds, you see. And they understood that the true slavery now is the slavery of ignorance on the minds of the African people. No matter where we are in the world, that's the war we have to fight now, to free our mind.
Brother Smalls, we're gonna give you a break. We're gonna take a break and we're gonna come back. Okay, take a day.
I said enough. I need to sit and listen, listen to some stuff, take some questions.
Yes. Then Yahsonn, we're gonna get into after we come back, we get into any lines will be open and any message you can get into. Let me see if we get a technician.
At Shabazz Organics, we believe real people deserve real food. So we're bringing you to Mansa's Last Stop, a farm where food barriers are removed and legacy is sustained. We believe there's power in picking, so we allow you to decide what leaves the farm and enters your kitchen organically.
Beat the summer heat, come and get your carambola, star fruit, make very nice drink. Come pick them yourself. All the trees them full of vitamin C, antioxidant, build up your immune system. Man's Last Stop. A whole shopping bag only $10. Half a shopping bag you pay $5. If you get $2, you must get some. Come get your carambola. Don't want to go to wait. Let's go, people.
When comfort, class, and reliability matter, choose the ride that delivers more. Imperial Rides Transportation Services, where every journey is treated like royalty, from airport transfers, private events, shopping trips, island tours, and executive travel. Imperial Rides moves you in style, clean, comfortable, on time, every time. Book your premium taxi or tour service today. Call or WhatsApp 869-665-8459 or email elandflavas@gmail.com. Imperial Rides Transportation Services. Your journey, our priority.
On the Rocks, the restaurant for you to check out if you're on your way to St. Kitts, or if you are just making your way over from St. Kitts, or if you just want a place to hang out and take your family to enjoy the sunset. On the Rocks is that perfect spot. Check them out. Get some of their vegan dishes, some of their fresh seafood, catch of the day options, and you can definitely check out some of their unique beverages within their well-stocked bar. On the Rocks Bar and Lounge, right there at Ole Seawater Taxi here in Nevis. And if you are thinking of traveling between the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, well, definitely the good folks at Islander Water Sports, check them out. They have the best seawater operations between the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis and beyond. They actually do charters to neighboring islands, St. Martin, St. Eustatius, Anguilla. You can just check them out. Islander Seawater Taxi. They take you to Reggae Beach. They've got some jet skis and other water sporting activities that they are involved with there on the beach. So go check them out. Tell them you heard about them right here on Real Entertainment Network and on the Topiks. And definitely we want to continue to encourage you to support June Brown. Help June Brown with her brain surgery and cancer treatment costs. Come on, we can do better than this. Let's keep contributing. We never know. It could be you. It could be someone of your family. Let's support our own people. June Quilly, June Brown, 63 years of age, and in the early part of 2025 fell ill, and eventually found out that she had tumors, and she's definitely in need of your service. So we just want to continue look at the number there on the screens, and please accordingly just send some support. And we're back with the second segment of our program for this evening here on Real Entertainment Network. It's another beautiful Tuesday evening, and we're in with another edition of the Topics right here on Real Entertainment Network. And we want to say good evening to the folks who are logged on. Usually we have our folks logged on simultaneously on Twitch TV, Facebook, and also on YouTube. Want to say good evening to all the folks who usually make it their business to comment. And I want to at the same time give the number out for you to call if you want to be a part of the conversation, or we would say true conversation, because we're not conning anybody here. So it's a true conversation that we're having here. And my brother spoke about truth earlier. So
I have a call coming in here, Yahsonn.
Calls are ready to come in. So, Professor.
Yes, caller, good evening.
Good evening, Bankie. How are you, brother?
I'm good, and how are you?
And Tefari, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Giving thanks.
Yes, hello?
Yes.
I'm on here?
Yes, go ahead. Yes, you're live.
Hi, good evening, Tefari. How are you?
Yes.
Brother Smalls, how are you?
I'm good, sir. And how are you doing?
Yes, go ahead.
Brother Smalls, how are you? This is Glendale.
I'm good, sir.
Glendale Herbert, you know him?
Glendale from back in City College days.
Oh, Glenn, yeah. Oh, you still here? Hey, that's a good thing. How are you doing? Yesterday, I was with Raymond Duguay, who went to school with us.
You, Ed Evans, and everybody else when you guys used to run. Jeffries, Professor Jeffries, and everybody else on campus. I remember the days when we used to run Unity with Kenny Bartholomew and all those guys.
Yes, we're still together, the Sons of Africa. Kenny,
on campus.
Yeah, he said, Mr. Herbert, he said they're still together. The group, he and the gentleman, they were still around. Yes, he said they're still
we've all
around.
gotten old together. We had a meeting last week.
I mean, some great days when we learned a lot. Brother Jeffries, I don't know what became of him.
What I'll do,
he's in a nursing home now, but he's well. He's physically very well. He's 90 years old now. His wife is just turning 90. She's still teaching the
everybody else, all these folks from the Black Panther movement. Those are great times, man.
Yes. We've lost a lot of brothers and sisters, but many of us are still here.
Most quintessential history in the Caribbean. It's known as the Queen of the Caribbean. You really need to delve deep into it at some point and understand it. And it's great a pleasure to see you guys. And Bankie, man, and Tefari, you guys are doing a splendid job. Your guys' reach has really begun to really get international now.
I appreciate it.
This is my brother, my friend. Oh,
well, what I'll do, I'll get your number with Professor Small, and you all communicate. I'll link you his number and you'll communicate. All right.
Thanks so much, man.
All right, no problem. Man. All right, thank you.
I'll talk to you soon, guys.
All right, cool. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes. What a small world it is, huh?
It is. Everywhere I go, I meet the brothers and sisters who we went to school. I got a call last night. A young man says, I'm Henry. He says, I used to be with you and Tony Spencer back in the 60s. So I bought land in Ghana, and I live in Ghana now. And he had seen a flyer of mine. I'll say, wow.
Yes.
Beautiful. See each other in a So that's a beautiful thing, because we struggle together. Freedom brings you so much closer. And I tell my people, don't be afraid of the truth. Yes, it's uncomfortable to make some adjustment in your minds. But when you make that adjustment, life gets sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. And when you get closer to Africa and you begin to realize what has been kept away from you, a people who built a world culture that is so beautiful. It gave birth to all of the major religions. The culture of Africa gave birth to all of the major religions.
Beautiful.
And you'll know that truth, and that will help set you free.
Yahsonn?
Someone asked, where did I dwell? I have a home in Ghana, and I have a home here in America. I have two, one in South Carolina with my sisters and my brothers, my birth family, and then one here with my married family here in New Rochelle, New York. And then I'm in Cape Coast, Ghana, where I'll be in a few weeks. And like I said, I adopted two children there. They're all grown-ups now, and they got their families, they got their businesses. One of them served in Parliament for 4 years, and she's a teacher, and the other teaches at the university. And all of them serve our people. Because my insistence was, if you want me to own you, you own your people. Otherwise, I will not own you. You know. And I'm proud and glad that God has blessed me that all of my children serve our people from wherever they are. And I have one that is the manager of Wycliffe John. That's why Wycliffe is still going, because my baby managed her, you know. And she's one of the best in the music industry administratively, but she has not sold her soul. She's an African.
Yes.
She practiced traditional African religion in her home. And we're still father and daughter, though she's in her 50s now and I'm in my 80s. We have not let each other forget the affection and love we have for one another, as is with all my children. I still call my brothers my sweetheart, and me and my brothers, one of them is 87, one is 84, and I tell them I love them every time I make a phone call, because that's the way we were taught as children, to love one another in the family, even if we have different views and points of views. The only way we can learn from each other is to love each other. That allow us to open up us enough to receive new information one from the other. You know, because the light can only exist if it's making an expression in darkness. You can't see light in light, you know. You can't make a distinction. Light becomes phenomenal when it's in darkness.
Very
and
true.
It shines something out to you that you haven't seen before or you haven't heard before, you know. But it's love, you know. The people who love us. One would think of a Maurice Bishop as just the president of a nation that got killed. But if he was written in a history book from thousands of years ago, he would be a prophet. He would not just be a president and somebody murdered the Americans, had him murdered. He would be a great prophet for the direction he gave us. Malcolm X would be a great prophet. Marcus Garvey would be a great prophet if we write our book about our experience on earth. Read the Bible. It is a biography of a family having an experience with God. Read it. It's about one family's experience with God from the beginning of it to the end. This one is descendant of this one. They even show that Christ's descendant line can go all the way back to David and so forth and so on. It's one family trying to work it out, get it right. And we are watching them because we don't read the book right. We're missing the point. Because we read the book of the enemy, go get the Ethiopian Bible. Ask, where's Lalibela? Why in Ethiopia there's 11 church hewn out of rock, down in the ground, an engineering marvel before there was a Catholic Church. What was the point? What were we trying to tell ourselves? What was the message? When God sent us the African, they call us the Moors. The Moors is a European word for black, which come from the Roman word morush, which come from the Greek word merosh, which means black skin. They marched into Europe in the 7th century across Gibraltar and took them civilizations to stop the barbarity. They built university. They taught them how to make bath. They showed them how to make soap. They brought them medicine, and they built schools for their children. And yet, out of that same place that we gave so much, Portugal and Spain, they came out with the barbarity of slavery under the guidance of the Catholic Church and caused the death of over 100 million of our ancestors. When we had our hands outreached to say, we will work with you. We welcome you to our shores. We did not know we were welcoming death. But even out of death and on the African concept, there is resurrection. Because we know in history there's at least 11 crucified Savior before Christ. And one of the most powerful is the one in Egypt. And this is Horus, Osiris, they call them Asar, and Aset, who they call Isis. And you can see the statue. She's holding the baby in the same position as Mary, except tens of thousands of years before Mary. It isn't that the people who wrote the Bible, let me be clear now, they weren't trying to commit a crime. They were trying to learn a lesson. It is those who then took the Bible later, the Catholic Church, the King James and those people, and went to war against humanity to make money, that desecrated the truth that the Africans gave to the world about the Christ. See, you got to get it right, otherwise they'll make you, even when you're trying to tell the truth, stab yourself. And you wonder, why am I bleeding?
Between there, why most of the time when one speak, they leave out the part of the Arab, and when it comes to that part, and
yeah, I try very hard. 1,500 years before 1492, the Arab carried out one of the most bloody slave trade in the history of the world against African peoples. The Arabs and the Turks. The Arabs side against Africans started in the 6th century. But even Islam is not theirs. They stole it from us. This small boy crazy. But remember, this small boy is Al-Hajj Amin Shahid. That's who the small boy is. I walked in Mecca, in Jeddah, in Medina, and I didn't ride. I walked, because I want to see what the Prophet experienced. I walked the whole pilgrimage. Almost died. I did it. And I learned. Muhammad, there's a surah in the Quran, it's called the Surah of the Cave, where he hides in the cave when the Arabs is trying to murder him, because Muhammad was a black man, trying to bring them a truth. He was an Ethiopian man, trying to bring them the light. But what did they do? Tried to murder him. And so he's hiding in the cave, and they said the spider weaved this web over the cave. So when they came to that particular cave, they said, he can't be in there because the spider web is all over there. He would have broken the web, right? But before he went into the cave, he told all of his followers to go where? Go to Ethiopia, the land of the blameless ones. That was the first Muslim community. The Arabs chased them to the borders of Ethiopia through Yemen, led by an Arab assassin named Abur al-As. But the Ethiopian king took them in and came with his army against the Arabs and said, these are our brothers and sisters who believe as we do. They don't tell you that's part of the story, right? And the Arabs had to back down because the Ethiopian army was mightier than them. And it goes even further. When the Prophet finally got his movement on the go, he needed some help once he got out of the cave. He went to a place called Medina, where he met some more black folks, and they called them Ansar Allah, the helpers of Allah. And that began to make up his first army when he waged the guerrilla war against the Arabs in Mecca, called the Battle of Badr. But he would stop the caravans, raid it, and give the goods and feed the poor. But they don't tell you that story. You see, the Jews are playing at the Wailing Wall, and there's a temple on top of the Wailing Wall called the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, supposed to be right on the top of where King Solomon's temple was. Well, they said Muhammad went there. Before they start praying towards Mecca, they used to pray towards that Qibla, right? And they prayed towards that because they said Muhammad went there and ascended into heaven alive and came back, like Enoch in the Ethiopian script, right? That's why you got to read these things. It'll blow your mind to learn the truth. The truth will scare the devil out of you. You know, let me just finish this one. Let me just, Let me just finish this one little piece. When he ascends into heaven, he hears the footstep of the black man Bilal ahead of him. What is that telling you? He said, the prophet says, when I ascended into heaven to go before Allah, I heard the footsteps of Bilal ahead of me. Bilal is the black man that first called the adhan, the call to prayer. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And we think, and if you look at the Arabic language, they keep saying, this is a Semitic language. Show me. The only place you'll see those scripts is in Sudan, called the Miratic script. Don't let people steal from you right in front of your eyes and you pretend you don't see the truth. But then the system got taken over after the Prophet is killed and Umar is killed and Ali, his nephew, is killed, his son-in-law is killed. Then it got taken over by some people that called them the Umayyads. These were the white folks, the Arab folks. Then they get taken over by some people called the Abbasid. These are the Kurds and the Turks. And Islam has never, ever been in our hands or even in the Arab hands ever since. Because those people you see over there now, they're not Arabs. They're just the Turkish Eastern Europeans, just like the ones that are occupying Palestine. Cousins fighting each other over something that don't belong to neither one of them.
You know, it's important. It's important that we have these discussions because you sort of put a lot of things into perspective by looking at things from a geopolitical and geo-spiritual concept to some extent, and a lot of this is going to bounce over the heads of many, and in some cases, many are going to just shut off or turn off because they have been pre-programmed to do so. And I am trying to interject this perspective because I know the geography that I happen to be living in, and I know
Yes,
the
sir.
level of indoctrination that would have taken place by the missionaries back then, who happened to be the same Catholics that you spoke about, the Methodists, the Anglicans, and the Moravians, and so on, who came in, and their mission was not necessarily to interrupt and disrupt the business of their kins, because it was their families and so on who were engaged in such activities. They assured them actually that they would make them to be more obedient and less vocal and rebellious and all that. However, a part of what was done during that was a part of indoctrination, brainwashing, and a program to say that anything outside of what is being taught in this brainwashing and this indoctrination is deemed blasphemous. And you should not listen to anything outside of this. And it doesn't matter what it is. So you find that part of the challenge that we have is having to overcome this level of indoctrination. And then,
Mhm.
like I pointed out to you a bit earlier, well, this would have been off ear when we were speaking, and I was saying to you that one of the other challenges we have is that it's mainly people like me and Brother King himself, who happens to be Rastafari, and who are basically ridiculed by the society, who sort of brings this sort of message. And so even before it is uttered, it is disrespected and disregarded. And so how do you how do you really help in relation to get
Mhm.
um, this that which you're speaking into the psyche of a people
Mhm.
who have been so brainwashed. To some extent, I have coined it as brain bleached because they say if it's washed, sometimes the colors remain and so on. But when it's bleached out, nothing else. So, your perspective on that?
Well, yeah. What I'm coming with is some black soap. We're gonna take that bleached out brain and we're gonna wash it in some black soap. Well, I'd like to recommend 3 books. One, Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Walter was murdered in Guyana back in the
I go on
70s.
there.
But you have to get that book, Walter Rodney. And then there's Dr. Tony Martin. Tony, God bless his beautiful soul. Tony was from Trinidad. Tony wrote this book just before he died. Matter of fact, he just finished the last year when the cancer took him. But this book is called A History of the Caribbean, and it is the greatest history ever written of the Caribbean. Dr. Tony Martin. And then there's the UNESCO History of Africa. It's originally was 7 volumes. I think they've now expanded it to 12 volumes. But just get the one if you can. The UNESCO History of Africa. And most of these things I'm telling you today is there. Is there. And then the last one is from a Senegalese brother. It won't be the last one because I got one more. The Senegalese brother, Cheikh Anta Diop. It's called Civilization or Barbarism. Civilization. You can get it in French or English.
Of that
And my
one.
brothers, he's king, you're on it. That's it right there. That is the gospel. Yeah. On
Yeah,
the
share anti
culture.
deal. Yeah.
And then there's this
I have a
little
few of
tiny
them.
book. Look at this little book. Little tiny book, right? It's Chinua Achebe, Nigeria. Things fall apart. Chinua Achebe, where it breaks down the psychological damage on our minds from colonialism and European missionaries and mercenaries. So that's your library you share with your people to substantiate some of the things I've been talking about. And of course you got the Egyptian Book of the Dead, but we never call it the Book of the Dead. And I see, Brother King, you had it there in your library. It's called the Book of the Coming Forth by Day and by Night. It means to come out of the darkness into the light, to come from ignorance in your mind into a consciousness of your mind. Okay? And then, of course, the pyramid text, the oldest known, and you can look this up in any encyclopedia in the Western world, and it will tell you the pyramid text is the oldest known written religious text on the planet Earth. And it is your book, out of which all of these other books have proceeded, so that it won't be so complicated. Tony Martin's, Eric Williams, Capitalism and Slavery, Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, and Tony's book. I tell you, when I first read the book, I'd been to his funeral, I'd cried at the funeral, but I had to cry over and over to read this book, A History of the Caribbean by Dr. Tony Martin. Tony put his heart in that research, talking about the entire Caribbean, its circumstances and its history, its politics and its culture. So we don't have to invent the wheel. There are those who sacrifice their lives for us already, and we need to read their works. And of course, the UNESCO history.
That's true, Professor. But then we live in a cycle where we still have many who come from among us who seek to, as much as possible, seek to maintain the status quo of systems and organizations that were designed to maintain us in a certain way. And so you find it a bit challenging. Like in the US and in Canada and America, where you guys are, in some cases, most of the people who are at the helm are of a different hue. In our cases in the Caribbean, we have people who look like me and you, out of the same communities and homes, but yet then they swear to uphold a system that has never been for us. And
The
so
same challenge here. We face with the
so,
same challenge.
so they always want to, even when you find one or two of us, like even in the case of Bob Marley and so many others who we speak about, when they try to rise up and they recognize that they have an influence. You mentioned Maurice Bishop earlier on. You see the end result of what happens. And so it is sometimes really a challenge when it comes to that. And so the mindset, like I said, a lot has been done with the brain bleaching. I was listening to something you mentioned a bit earlier before we came on here, and you spoke to the, I think it was John Harkin's Amazing Grace, and the fact that it is one of the most well-known
Right.
songs that is sung during
A
church and so
murderous
on.
form of
And if they
repentance
know the
after
history
he
of,
gets from murdering us, raping us, destroying us, and now he wants the comfort of peace. He writes his redemption song, and we make it our spiritual anthem. I remember when my mom passed, and I got to South Carolina, I said, like, I will get my gun and empty this church if anybody sings that song over my mother. And everybody understood. You take that anthem and you put it in the garbage. That man committed murder after murder, year after year, rape year after. And when he had made his money and now he wanted to go and settle in peace and enjoy it, and to be accepted in his own consciousness, he writes Amazing Grace, and I'm going to make the hymn. Could you imagine a Jew making Hitler's birthday song their anthem? Not even think of it. You would not even try to make that equation. And yet we take our Hitler song and we sing it in our churches with the greatest passion. And don't understand, it's like ingesting poison voluntarily every day, every Sunday.
but Professor, these things highlight how brainwashed and indoctrinated we are, because
But
you
that's what
spoke
you're
to
here. Your
you spoke
job,
to
recognize that and clean it up.
you spoke to earlier on, the fact that spirituality existed way before Roman Catholicism and the Roman Catholic Church and all that, and you spoke to um, Bibles and writings, and so that would have predated whether it's the Roman Catholic and King
Oh,
James and so on. But then here is it. Many may not know that King James, the one who is given the credence for
the
um,
homosexual. The admitted
rewriting the
homo.
Bible and so on.
He admits
That is
in
one.
writing that he is homosexual and he's in love with the man and he loves that man more than he loves his kingdom. He put it in writing.
Well,
That's
that's
the King
one
James.
part. That's one part. But
Okay, I
another
just
thing I
want to make
wanted to
sure that you
highlight,
know. Yeah,
one of the things I wanted
you
to
know.
highlight is the fact that if people are supposed to do some research as well, they're going to find out that King James also had a book called Demonology.
Yes.
And so the same man who would have given you this King James version of the Bible, which you want to, uphold, and he also had a book called Demonology. And also, another fun fact is the Bible that we do have to do with the 66 books. The original King James version of 1611 had in the apocryphal books, and they were then taken out. And so there was a point that you were making earlier on when you spoke to referring to the Bible as a book. I sometimes take the time out to clarify it a little bit, because it is actually a collection of books, because that's what the word Bible means. And one of the reasons that I differentiate it is because I tend to take the scripture that was highlighted in Revelations, which happens to be one book of the collection of books. And in that book, it speaks to you cannot add or change anything to that book. And a lot of people and scholars and theologians and so on interpret it to mean that you cannot add or change anything from the Bible. But in reality, it spoke to you can't add or change anything from that book, because Revelation in itself is just
men sitting down and writing that. There were men. You got a history of the Nicene, the conference. The Council of Chalcedon. It took them 700 years to mess up the Bible. 700 years before they came up with a version to give to the world.
But when you talk these things, majority of the people say that you're crazy, and then plus we are Rastas. And so when we were talking these things, they say, oh, we're using cannabis, and is the cannabis having us talk these kind of crazy things? So that's why I'm glad, like I said earlier on, that people like you who don't look like us, so to speak, and would go through some of their institutions as well, could come and shed some light on these, sort of issues. And spirituality, again, is another thing within our culture. We look at education, we look at other aspects, but I find that the spiritual component, which is a very vital part of our overall holistic development, is a lot of times ignored and put forward in the place more a religion. And Haile Selassie would have highlighted the fact that there's a difference between religion and spirituality. Religion is just a vehicle that should lead you to spirituality. That should be the ultimate goal. But we are really grateful to have you on the platform. I'm going to take a few minutes to go through some of the comments before I give you an opportunity to say something again, sir. But we said we don't deal with this business. But so we have Spyler Flick saying, do you understand G's or geese? He says, I think it's time our people abandon the term black. We are melanated. The whole labeling us black as their supremacy and control agenda. I don't know if you want to, touch that. So hold on to that point a bit. Pedro Jemot says, greetings. Pedro Jemot says, which part of the motherland Brother Smalls dwell? I think earlier on he said Ghana, you said, right?
Yeah, Ghana and the U.S. Most of my time in the U.S., but I split it between Africa, my home in Ghana, and here.
Ghana in the Africa is where he dwells. Carl Paris says, so happy that you are able to interview Brother and Professor James Small. Thanks for bringing our African and Harlem King to our network. Slaughterhouse says, greetings and love kings, checking in. Wow, one of my teacher in the house tonight. Boop, 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 boop. Wisdom increase. Evan Nisbet says, it is said that the phrase, be not afraid, is mentioned 365 times in the Bible, which to me means that one should mention it to themselves each day of the year. Carl L. Parry says, yes, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the Real Entertainment Network. And so, yes, let's do that again. Encourage folks to go on over to the platform. While we're reading the comments, take a 10 seconds, go over to the YouTube platform, click on the subscribe button, like, share, and click on the notification bell so that every time we have a program that you are informed. All who are logged on tonight, I'm going to be checking after. We should see at least more than 100 new subscribers this evening. And so please take that. We're not asking you for money. We're not asking you for a donation. We're just asking you to click on the subscribe button, like, share, and click on the notification bell. Tambo Batiste says, how good and how pleasant for Professor Smalls to bring his minutia and precision to this discussion. Fund CY Black Studies, Memories with Professor Smalls, Jeffries, and Kuminaman Wire.
Yes.
Pedro Jamat says UNESCO, the serpent. Pedro Jamat says, who killed Bishop, not Bernard? Some of us run to live in the West, maybe for capital, but who am I? Only observing. Slaughterhouse said, I keep telling people about that song. It's an insult to our ancestors and even to our own existence higher. Just listen to the lyrics about Amazing Grace, Big Stoops. Pedro Gemot says, he also said religion is personal. And so, yes, Professor, people are listening in. Rusty Libert says, just start listening. Kevin Hanley says, good night. And, the people are listening, and our platform usually have, wide array of audience, people from all over the world. We, as much as possible, seek to have a wide array of topics. As you realize, the program is called the Topiks, and we as much as possible do not limit our discussions, and we try to, as much as possible, bring diverse discussions to the fore. And tonight is no different. The only difference is that we are really honored to have such a veteran like yourself in our presence, and to have accepted our invitation to come on the platform. I mean, there are lots of other things that I know we are going to discuss, and I'm hoping that you would be just as open for future opportunities to be on the platform, because it's our life work, and you have done so much. I am happy also to learn that you have a base in Trinidad in the Caribbean, and that's good bit of information, and seemingly you have been there for some time. You could probably share a little bit more of that with us, and that makes us even happier to know the connection. It would be very easy for us to connect since you already have Caribbean connections. So you could expound a little bit on the Trinidad connections and Caribbean connections. Bankie, I don't know if you have any questions, because we are already almost on the 2 hour. So I would give him the opportunity to speak a little bit about his Caribbean connections, and then we can get into any other question from you, and then we will probably give him an opportunity to wrap up. Your mic is muted, Bankie. Your mic is muted. Not hearing you.
It's me you're asking?
Okay, sorry. I'm hearing you now. I'm hearing you now. Sorry, my bad. Bankie?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not hearing Bankie. Bankie seems as if he is frozen a bit, but Professor Smalls, like the work you have been doing over the years, it's great. Um, and great is an understatement, I think. I see that you would have had some very close connections with Malcolm X as well, and Malcolm X, many men that know, also have Caribbean roots as well. His mother was from Grenada. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of Islam, again, Louis Farrakhan, he has Caribbean roots again. His father is from Jamaica, and his mother is actually from St. Kitts and Nevis. And so
Mm-hmm.
we would have these deep U.S. Connections. However, I don't know how familiar you are with the fact that we would have had emancipation in the Caribbean a lot earlier than in the U.S. And so the issues and so on that you guys would have had, we would have already, to some extent, um, moved away to some extent, and so it's sometimes a bit different. You care to elaborate a little bit, seeing that you have both um, opportunities to be between the Caribbean and have that relationship. How do you see the difference with what happened in terms of the enslavement and the maroon, culture in the Caribbean versus that of the U.S.?
Well, it's not as different as we think. That's why I was mentioning that my family come out of the maroon community. But they didn't use that word in America. Now some use it in the history writing. But we were called the Freewood, and then they used the N-word. They call it the Freewood. And where my people lived on my grandfather's side was in a place called Burgess, South Carolina. It's right off of the ocean by a place called Murrells Inlet, not far from Myrtle Beach. And we didn't come out of the bushes and we're still there. Most of that land is still ours, and our people still live there. But whites didn't start coming into the area until the late 1960s. The policemen or nobody would dare come up in there. That's where I grew up. My grandmother's side, my grandmother was the first generation born in America. Her mother was from Sierra Leone, the Mendi people. And her father was from Uganda, the Tutsi people. And so that's my their pictures are up behind me. My great-grandmother, you can see the man in the corner. That's my great-grandfather from Uganda. And so America had multiple maroon communities. And people are just beginning to write about it because it was never viewed in that way. From New Orleans to South Carolina, Mississippi, once we could get into those woods and the swamps where we could fight and hide. One of the biggest maroon community was in Virginia. And it was called the not the petrified forest, but when the whites came in, they didn't come out. And they lasted in there for almost 250 years. Only after the Civil War that they began to leave. They call it the Dismal Swamps. Because of the peat and the quicksands, they mastered that environment, and their enemies couldn't master the environment. And so there were some Irish people that came in there with us, and some Asiatic Native Americans that came in there with us. And much of that population now still lives in northwestern Virginia and North Carolina. And so Florida was the biggest maroon community we had in North America. Except they tell lies in history. They said, there were some Indian people down there named the Seminoles. No, it was Cimarron. It's out of Cimarron, which is the Spanish word for runaway, right? The runaway slaves. That's where the word maroon comes out of. Well, that's where the word Seminole, the dumb white man and his Irish and his Scots could not pronounce Cimarron. So they said Seminole. And we married into the Creek Indian, the Red Tail Creeks. Most of the Creek Nation fought with the whites, and they enslaved us too. But a smaller Creek Nation called the Red Tail Creek sided with the Africans. And we worked with the Spanish in Florida. The Spanish gave us sanctuary for hundreds of years. That was the largest of the maroon community. Many of them, after the third maroon community, we defeated the Americans twice. The third one, some of the people, some stayed in Florida and are still there today, but some left and went to Mexico, southern Mexico, and they merged with the blacks there, and they're still there till today. Out of that population, the first president of Mexico who was black came from that population of formerly enslaved people. And the other place they went is to Oklahoma, which was then considered Indian territory. That was that Trail of Tears they talk about when they marched us and many of us died. And they built that place that they call Black Wall Street, Greenwood, that they burnt down later in the 1920s. There's just so much history about people and their resistance that and we're still trying to wake our people up over here up. But history erases the mystery. History erases the mystery. Don't take history is the greatest sword you got. History is the greatest weapon you got. Use history and the truth of history. And then we come to my beloved Trinidad. I've talked about Ghana here in America, but Trinidad is my other home. I don't know whether you know Pearl Springer, the Poet Laureate of Trinidad, Aintu Springer, or Kefra Cambone, and Asha Cambone, who leads the Emancipation Support Committee, Brother Daga, who was in the 60s, were one of the leaders of the opposition. So these are my people who I was close to. And Sister Pat, many of them have gone to the ancestors. Kefra is still alive. They're doing the Emancipation Lecture Series, I think, right now in Port of Spain. So my wife's family come out of that community. And so I spent a lot of time there. My key shrine is in Trinidad. I was trained both by Omotushu, I had multiple trainers from Nigeria, but I chose that shrine called the Kenny Cyrus Ile Ejube. It's the Guanas Enterprise Village in northern Trinidad. My wife's family comes from southern Trinidad. And so I spent a lot of years there helping with the development of the Emancipation Day process, helping with the development of the Orisha community there. And so we did get the government in 1 year when he was president to recognize Shango Day. They wouldn't give us a full holiday, but they gave us Shango Day. But we worked with the Spiritual Baptists and pushed them to give a national holiday to the Spiritual Baptists, which is a syncretism of the Yoruba religion and the Baptist religion. In the same way, you see Santeria is a syncretism between the Catholic Church and the Yoruba religion. And so I spent a lot of time through the years. I consider that also my home, my family. My Omi, who is my goddaughter, is now my godmother because her mother was my godmother who taught me, and she has gone to the ancestors. So the little girl that I watched grow up is now my teacher. You understand? She's the spiritual leader of our shrine. We're one of the biggest shrines in Trinidad. So if you really want to go and see African tradition at work, but it's not just Trinidad. I'm sure you have it there also in Nevis. Maybe you have to hide a little more than we have to do there. But we came out of the bush a long time ago. People didn't know when in the 1990s we had a Congress, a Yoruba Congress in Trinidad, and 75 shrines came out the bush. Nobody knew was there. You know, a shrine is equivalent to what they call a church, right? 75 came out the bush, okay? Because they were safe keeping it on the down low. And when they realized that we can now come together and step out, then they step forward. Karakou, off of the Grenadines, off of Grenada, is another place with a lot of high African spirituality. And our shrine, when Dessalines was assassinated in Haiti, many of the voodoo community was under attack from the Catholic Church and Petillon and Boyer, these mulattoes who took over the government. And so many left and went to other parts of the Caribbean. And my shrine went to Grenada in the Karakou. And then from Karakou, we went to Trinidad, where they found safety and a base. So that's my home. I've done still do political work there. Have so many brothers and sisters that I love so dearly that I've worked with there. And I've worked in other communities as well, you know, in Grenada, of course, in Jamaica, of course, a lot of time in St. Thomas, you know, St. Vincent, St. John. Sometimes I forget I put a lot of years in the Caribbean. My wife used to wonder, well, where do you really live? Because I'm always gone. But we're one Africa. We're one people. It don't matter where we are in the world. There's only one African people, one African nation. They've scattered us to the winds. But when we recognize ourselves, we're no longer scattered.
Yes.
When we recognize I belong to you, you belong to me. If you went to Cuba, they have the African tradition there. It's called Lukomi. Okay? And Lukomi means I belong to you and you belong to me. Like Ubuntu. It's the same word in another language. And so our people never stop practicing. We've always kept the tradition. That's why y'all are on this radio, this computer today. You're the continuation of a tradition, of resistance that have always existed in Nevis. There was never a time in Nevis when we didn't fight back. There was never a time when there wasn't, so no matter how much they were ridiculed, there was always somebody trying to tell us the truth. Down the next generation in that truth telling. And I know a lot of brothers and sisters are afraid because when you have to change, it's very frightening because you were comfortable and you felt safe, even though you were uncomfortable and knew that what you felt safe in wasn't the truth. But because you felt safe there, you stayed there. So what I'm saying is begin to study the history of Nevis. Don't bother with all the others yet. Just study the history of the resistance of the black people in Nevis against the tyranny of slavery and the tyranny of colonialism. Study that history. And I guarantee you, you'll never stop searching. And go to Tony Martin's book, History of the Caribbean. Then go to the old man, Eric Williams, Capitalism and Slavery. Now, Eric wrote this fantastic book, almost a Bible. But he wouldn't let his book be used in the school because it was too radical. He was the president. He was the prime minister, and his book was too radical for him. So it's about studying history, not being afraid. History will take away the fear. What you're doing right now, you're teaching your people that their history is worthy. You're teaching your people. The Bible that they follow says, honor thy mother and thy father, as your days may be long upon this earth. Well, that means honoring your ancestors. In Deuteronomy, and I forgot the chapter, I think it's the ninth chapter, I forgot the verse, in their Bible. It tells you to study the history of the old ones that went before you, and it tells you to teach it to your children and never forget. But we're not doing something that they're not being taught to do because somebody's not telling them about that verse. It's like the people that won't recognize that Mary Magdalene was one of Christ's disciples, and she was a woman. The church says she was a whore and a harlot. Not one word in the Bible calls this woman a whore and a harlot. Not one word. The clergy has created that falsehood and that lie. Right? So reading and studying, and let your eyes open to truth. And that truth will take away the fear. Study about the history of the elders of Nevis and St. Kitts. What were they fighting for? What were they fighting against? And only then will you begin to appreciate, when you look at the greater Caribbean, we never stopped fighting one day since we left Africa. Not one day. Maybe all of us wasn't, but somebody was. Somebody was, women and men. In Haiti, I spent good time in Haiti, done a lot of work in Haiti. You had a man named Dessalines.
Yes.
But Dessalines was raised by a woman. Oh, her name is gone out of my mind. But that woman was captured in Benin. She was an Igoji. a general in the Amazon armies of Benin. That's the woman that raised Vaseline. So what else you think she gonna raise him to be except a good soldier? Toya, Mother Toya was her name. Then there was another group of women in Haiti who were old. They couldn't be raped no more. They couldn't produce children no more. So the Catholic Church would bring them in and use them to teach the young ladies, to try to make them submissive. They called them the dadas. Well, you know what the dadas did? Was taught the young women who became the wives of all the revolutionaries that destroyed Napoleon and the French. We never gave up. We never quit.
Professor
So
Smalls, we definitely will have to get you back.
Yes, sir.
Yahsonn, you get it in a couple of words, and then Professor Smalls.
Definitely. There were a couple of comments,
Yes.
and one I think that I would want him to address in his wrap up as well. I definitely want to welcome you back, Miss Professor Smalls. I think that
I'll
we
be
do
happy.
have a lot to uncover because these are topics that are very timely, and I think our youth will do well with these sort of discussions because lots of things and a lot of other persons out there would cause them to question certain things, and so when you have people who can validate and encourage them to even research more, I think that is very helpful. So C. Gaskell says, can the professor expand a little on the falling out between Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X? My readings have always maligned Elijah, but what was the reality? And that is the question that I think I would want you to respond to in your wrap up. I read
Yes.
of a slave owner named Anthony Johnson. Do you guys know him? Anthony and for correction, person who wrote in on the wall, for me, I prefer to use the word enslaved because to
Right.
refer to
I've
our
heard
people
that word.
as a
Yeah.
slave, we were not born slave. We were enslaved by a group of people who felt that we were not even deemed as humans. We were considered
Right.
3/5 the extent of a human and treated as animals. And so, yes, those are the only comments that I think I see I have here. And there's a lot of other things that I would really love to get into, but like I said, we have already exhausted the 2 hours, and so I'm glad that you're really willing to come back. And so we're gonna have to,
Absolutely.
arrange that sometime. But in your wrap up, we're gonna give you an opportunity to, give your closing remarks, and while you're doing that, you could respond to the question, which states, um, can you expand a little on the
On
falling
Malcolm
of
X.
between
Yeah.
Muhammad and Malcolm?
Yeah.
Yes, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first, I don't know the story of Anthony Johnson, so I can't comment on that. But
Okay.
when Malcolm X was assassinated, I'm the one that took over the leadership of his mosque after he was assassinated. I was 21 years old then, long time. But the thing that happened between, well, first, you've heard of COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence. I'm sure they have it in St. Kitts as well.
Of course.
The police authority, law enforcement authority infiltrate our organizations. They cause confusions. They cause divisions
Yes.
because those in power want to stay in power. And so they want to shake anything that might shake their holds on power. Well, the same thing happened in the Nation of Islam. Even Malcolm X said it, that the Nation of Islam was thoroughly infiltrated by the FBI and the U.S. Justice Department. And I won't call any of their names at this point, but we know who some of them are now. And some was at the very top of the Nation of Islam. And they planted the seed of division between Elijah and Malcolm. Malcolm X and Elijah, they tell you it happened over the Kennedy death, that Malcolm made a speech after Elijah told him to be quiet, and he talked about the chickens coming home to roost, and Elijah suspended him, and then he weren't allowed back. But that was at the end of it. There was a war inside the nation on the part of certain elements in Elijah's family, his sons and his brothers, who opposed Malcolm X's leadership because they felt that if Elijah had died, and Elijah in this period of time was very sick and everybody thought he was going to die, then Malcolm would take over. And Malcolm was a purist. Some of these men who opposed Malcolm were still dealing drugs. Some of them was committing other criminal offense while they were still in the Nation of Islam. And they saw that Elijah being very sick after the 1963 Savior's Day Convention in Philadelphia. And Elijah brought Malcolm to the stage and said, "This is my heir apparent." He didn't bring his sons. He didn't bring his brothers. He made Malcolm X his heir. And that's when things that was all the jealousy and envy and hatred was already there. But now it escalates. And when the situation happened with Kennedy's death and Malcolm spoke out, they used that as an excuse to get rid of him. The old man was very sick and he was in Arizona. They didn't think he was going to make it. But he did. He disproved them all wrong. But at that moment, they thought that was his demise. And so they had to get rid of Malcolm so that he would not become the leader of the Nation of Islam. And the other thing was you had people who were religious people. They just wanted to be Muslims and make money off of the poor in the congregation, just like the church. But Malcolm took it to a political space, and they thought the political space was going to bring heat on them, and they couldn't make him sell in religion. You hear what I'm saying? I'm telling you the truth. Huh? And out of that young man gets killed, 39 years old. So when he got suspended and he realized the forces against him was too powerful, then he said, "Okay, then I'm gone." But he told Elijah, he wrote letters to Elijah, which we still have on record. He says, "I will come back even without being a minister. I will come. I made a mistake speaking out when you told me not to, so let me back. And I don't have to be in any capacity except to be a servant to you." Most of those letters that he wrote to Elijah, the others never let Elijah see them. Even though Elijah told them no one was to touch Malcolm. But the FBI and the CIA and the New York City Police Department, who organized and orchestrated the assassination, manipulating those in the nation, especially out of the Newark, New Jersey's mosque under James Shabazz, to murder and assassinate Malcolm X. It wasn't coming from Elijah Muhammad. It came from these people who wanted power. And they saw Malcolm as being the person who was going to ascend to the power if the old man died. And Malcolm was contrary to their thinking. Okay? And of course, the white press, because the CIA was so deeply involved, because Malcolm X, 2 weeks following the date that he's assassinated, would have been in Bandung in Asia at a conference of non-aligned states called by Ahmed Ben Bella, who was then the president of Algeria, and the keynote speakers were going to be Malcolm X and Ernesto Che Guevara. And the United States did not want that. So they had to kill him before the conference. You understand? The brother from Kenya, who was his comrade and who helped him, they killed him the very next day. I forgot the brother's name. Another brother who was from Guyana, who was going to give Malcolm his space at the UN to speak, Mr. Cummings, they killed him the next week. But 5 other brothers from the Caribbean and Africa was murdered in the wake of Malcolm's murder that nobody talks about. A good book by a brother named Zach covers some of this. But no, he was murdered primarily by the Central Intelligence Agency of America, the FBI of America, the New York City Police Department, and rogue elements of the Nation of Islam. That's the truth, without going into finite detail.
Yes, that's a lot. I mean,
Everybody know, I know. And everybody know, I know.
Yeah,
I'm his
man.
sister's
yes,
bodyguard, and I'm his only successor.
Mm.
And on May
That's
and
19th, we will be
that's
at his graveside, where I've stood for 60 years, letting the
so
world not forget.
your final words, Dr. Small, to the people of St.
History,
Kitts and Nevis
the
and the
mystery,
rest of
and
the region.
that true freedom is to be shackled to your African identity. True freedom is to be shackled to your African identity. Love your ancestors. Your history is nothing but the story and experience of your ancestry. Your history is the story and experience of your ancestors. Love your ancestors and know that God dwells within you, not above you, within you. And if you just work with those three things, you'll be free. And you'll learn how to
Yes, sir.
love freedom. And remember this one thing, freedom, what does the word itself mean? Liberated, free, dome, mind. The word freedom itself means a liberated mind. What did Garvey say and what did Bob sing about? Free your mind. That's what freedom
emancipated
means.
from mental slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, yes,
So
son. I
thank you.
mean,
Come and speak with you and have some fun. And now I'm going downstairs and eat some of my wife's cooking before I sleep.
Well,
Dr.
you
Smalls,
know,
we greatly appreciate you taking the invitation and spending the time with us this Tuesday evening. I know the listening audience is locked in, well in depth. Everybody at the front of the class taking all the information and the knowledge you're pouring out to them, and definitely looking forward in having you back and wondering what guests are going to come bring on next and stuff like that. But it's an honor, it's a privilege. I mean, having you here, speaking to my listening audience and stuff like that. I know they're grateful for having you and learning from you. And I know many of them will go and research who you are and stuff like that and continue following, being a follower of you on your podcast and stuff like that, wherever you're at. So thanks again for choosing Real Entertainment Network and becoming on this podcast to educate the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and the rest of the region and all who listen Real Entertainment and the topics. Yes, son?
yes, it's definitely an honor to have had the opportunity to meet electronically, or at least telepathically, with Professor Professor James Small, and looking forward to, as he mentioned, maybe in the not too distant future, him being physically and even speaking with us.
Yes.
It's huge. There's so much more that I know we're gonna have to discuss, because here is it that we are having in our presence the man who would have taken up the mantle after Malcolm X would have passed, and that would have been some, hard shoes to fill, and you would have filled it and continued to do the work over the years. And so we're gonna have to
Yes.
engage in some of the discussions. We haven't even spoken to a lot of the trips that you would have taken back to Africa and visiting, Kemet or Egypt, and visiting whether it's Ethiopia and Lalibela, and all of these different things. Um, and so we definitely are looking forward to having you back on the platform. Your Trinidad connection, so you're already in the Caribbean, and we're looking to bring you to this side of the Caribbean as well. And so we thank you, Professor Smalls. We want to thank the good folks at Islander Water Sports and the Rocks for sponsoring our program, the Topics here on Real Entertainment Network. We want to thank all those who have called in, those who commented on the wall, those who followed our instructions and gone over to YouTube and click on the notification bell and subscribe to the platform. We really want to thank all of you, and look forward to having you on our program when we have another edition of Everything Agriculture coming up on Friday, and also to look forward to having you next week when we have Top Cop, PG Walwin. on the platform. Former Chief of Commissioner of Police here on St. Kitts and Nevis, Chief Commissioner of Police in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and presently Chief of Police in Texas, but is getting ready to resign at the moment. But he has a wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience, and willing to share a lot of that in terms of crime fighting, intelligence, and all that with our people. And so we look forward to having that engagement. We want to thank everybody. Thank you, Professor Smalls, and we do definitely want to welcome you back, and we look forward to that. I think our guests would be, our listeners would be definitely grateful. Donna 2 says, appreciate the connections he's making of us as one people, but throughout so many communities in U.S., Florida, Virginia, and the Carolinas, Mexico, Jamaica, Trinidad, and St. Kitts and more. She says, greetings to all from Atlanta. What rich and interesting history the professor is sharing. And so, Professor, people are listening, people are appreciating you being here on the platform. And we want to thank you. We want to thank the Real Entertainment Network team, Ira, Reese, Alan, and all the others behind the scenes who work to make this a reality. Thank you, Bankie, my co-host, and Enough Love Islander, and The Rocks, Imperial Rides, Shabazz Organics, and Heritage Cafe. We open for lunch tomorrow. Definitely come and check us out and enjoy the ambience there and full joy the good cooking from Sofia. In the meantime, people, see you again on Friday. Enough love, Ira, everybody. Go give thanks.
Peace and blessings.
Into the world, the Topiks. Bankie Yahsonn. Real conversations. Hey. Lately we be having conversations with the people, cause we feel like there's nobody really talking truth. We be having conversations with the people, cause too many media houses changing up the news. Everything was green light, now we seeing red. Everybody got opinions, few got facts instead. We be having conversations with the people, cause we feel like there's nobody really talking truth. Tuesday night and everybody tuned in live. Bankie and Yahsonn bringing reasoning every time. Talking politics and the things affecting lives. Breaking down the stories they be trying to hide. Used to trust the system, now the trust gone. Everybody talking loud, but the facts wrong. People tired of the fake and the gimmicks too, so they coming to the Topiks for a clearer view. Got the whole Caribbean locked on the station. Real Entertainment Network building conversations. No script vibes, not staged for the camera. Just real people talking straight with stamina. Maybe we be having conversations, cause we feel like there's nobody really talking truth. We be having conversations, cause too many media houses changing up the news. Everything was green light, now we seeing red. Everybody got opinions, you got facts instead. We be having conversations, cause we feel like there's nobody really talking truth. Sometimes Fridays got a special live session. Big topics got the whole place stressing. Agriculture, crime, economy discussion. Every episode spark another conversation, and the comments start flying when the live start. Everybody got a view from the heart. Some agree and some disagree too, but at least the Topiks bringing real views. No pretending when the mic turn on. Yeah, I send reasoning while Bankie stays strong. People checking in from overseas too, cause authentic conversation hard to come through. Everything was green light, now we seeing red. Everybody got opinions, you got facts instead. We be having conversations with the people, cause we feel like there's nobody